Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of the State of Scottish Football here on the A State of Mind network. We're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, ready to dive into the weird and wonderful world of Scottish football. I'm Sean McGill, and joining me on this lovely summer's evening is a very colourful Jack Donnelly. How are you, Jack? I'm very keen to hear how your week's been, actually.
I'm not surprised to hear that, Sean. I'm doing all right today. I've had a bit of a kind of chilled out day, to be honest. It's been nice. I've not really had an awful lot on. It's been a busy kind of couple of days, so nice to have a bit of downtime. But my week didn't get off to the best of starts, as I'm sure you'll be delighted to remind me of at every given opportunity. But I've been all right today. I can say that.
I'm glad to hear that you're getting sort of progressively better. I'm still clinging on to Monday night, but perhaps that's something we'll get onto a bit later on. Myself and Struan Garvey looked back at that one. If you want to check out yesterday's edition of the State of Scottish Football, you can do that all the time. Check them out on demand if you can't catch the live show, but we do very much enjoy you joining us live here at 6 o'clock every weekday. And of course, you can get involved in the comments, something that we very much encourage. Something else we encourage you to do, and it's for yourself, is to subscribe to the State of Mind YouTube channel to get yourself entered into some fantastic prize draws, some great things being offered there. And of course, you get all this fantastic content, the State of Scottish Football every night, a Celtic State of Mind, so many great unplugged shows as well with music guests. It's a plethora of entertainment options, and it would just improve your life dramatically. So I very much suggest you do that. We're making the most of the transfer talk while we can before the window slams shut at the end of the month. So, Jack, let's get into a little bit of that. And despite the fact that we learned this week that there is only one team in Ayrshire, we have to talk about two former honest men. So let's start with Celtic goalkeeper Ross Doohan. He's joined up with former Dundee United manager Mickey Mellon down at Tranmere Rovers on a season-long loan. Tell us a bit about him at Somerset Park, because I know that we'll get onto that in a bit, that his loan spells last season weren't as successful, but his time in Ayrshire, from what I've heard from you and what I've read about his time at Somerset Park, was a successful one.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, we had him for 2 seasons, actually, 2 seasons on loan. And he was a massively popular figure amongst the United fan base. It was kind of a time where we didn't actually really have a senior goalkeeper contracted to the squad. We had a young lad, Ellis Reid, who's no longer at the squad, or at the club rather, and Ross Doohan was kind of the senior figure at kind of 19 and 20 just turning. So he kind of had that on his back from the word go in a fairly competitive league, and he kind of took to it like a duck to water. Honestly, he was really impressed with just. Really athletic. He had a good kind of sense of communication, a good sense of leadership for such a young guy, and he was someone that the Ayr fan base got right behind from the get-go. I'm really happy to see him kind of getting that more chances, because I was a bit annoyed that he went to Ross County last season and kind of seemed to just kind of fall into obscurity, apart from the fact that he was the third of 3 goalkeepers called Ross at Ross County last season. I think that was probably the most glowing moment of his time there, that he could contribute to that statistic. But I'm excited to see how he gets on. Obviously, Mickey Mellon obviously knows the Scottish game, so will know of his talents, and I'm sure he'll be having a great season down there, and potentially could come up here and maybe challenge at Celtic, because God knows they've been needing a goalkeeper.
They certainly have been. Well, you mentioned Mickey Mellon. Of course, he had him in that loan spell at Dundee United as well. He would have saw Ross Doohan in the flesh. He was kind of brought in after that injury to Benjamin Siegrist in the fantastic season he was having, but still it seemed to be Dennis Mehmet was the sort of preferred option there, still sort of limited minutes for Ross Doohan. And I guess the same could be said for his spell at Ross County, where he did seem to start the season as number 1, but was eventually displaced by Ross Laidlaw, which... I mean, Ross Laidlaw had a good season, I think, last, but I think he's still sort of culpable to make a few mistakes, and perhaps isn't the most sort of strong goalkeeper in this season's Scottish Premiership, would be my sort of nice analysis of him. So how important is that it's a manager who knows him, has worked with him previously, and has still thought that he's worth bringing down to Tranmere with him? That should serve Doohan's chances of playing regularly for Tranmere Rovers some sort of credit.
I think it will, and I think it's going to be especially encouraging for Tranmere Rovers fans to actually see, in the fact that Mickey Milne had him on loan for that spell at Dundee United, and while he didn't play as often as he potentially could have done because of Dennis Mehmet, as you said, it's kind of speaking volumes of the fact that Mickey Milne's taken him back down. He's taken him on a loan again for the season, so he's clearly seen something he's really liked in doing and what he could potentially bring to Tranmere Rovers and build from the back, really, because he's a goalkeeper that'll win you games. He's one of these. He's got game-winning saves in him at multiple opportunities over the course of 90 minutes. So definitely encouraging for Tranmere Rovers fans this signing, and I'm excited to kind of keep track of him, see how he gets on down south of the border.
Having watched him for a couple of years, when you watched him, and I guess you could sort of, if it's that perspective has changed, and you could comment on how you feel about him now, could you see him as having long-term potential at Celtic? Do you think he does have the capabilities to be a number one at Parkhead, despite the fact, of course, we know they've just brought in Joe Hart on a 3-year deal, but do you think that he has the talent that could take him to that sort of level?
I think he definitely did. While he was down in Ayrshire. I think that potentially might have been stunted. I know he got that kind of Premiership experience, with County and then with United as well, but he wasn't getting that consistent run of games. And I feel like for any young player, the best way to develop them is to get them game time, of course. So I feel like that progression towards having that kind of staking a claim for a place in the starting lineup for Celtic, it might have been stunted by the last season or so. So hopefully this season at Tranmere, he can get that back on track and potentially be putting his hat in the ring for starting number one coming, what will that be, the 22-23 season next year.
That's mental, eh? That seems like a long time away. I think as well, it would be great from a Scotland perspective, a national team perspective, to have Ross Doohan getting regular minutes at whatever level, really, because as we all know, it's very well documented that the 3 goalkeepers who went to the European Championships are fairly sort of old in age. You wouldn't expect them to be around for too much longer. Less so John McLaughlin, but I think that could certainly be said for both Craig Gordon and David Marshall. Behind that, the options kind of look like Liam Kelly, who's of course Motherwell's number one now, and then Robbie McCrory, who's a youngster at Rangers as well, who didn't have a very successful loan spell at Livingston. So we need these options to be coming through, and as we've seen, options can emerge from nowhere. These teams will be given, these players will be given chances if they get a good run of form. So if Ross Doohan can do that, perhaps have a solid season at Tranmere and then translate that to somewhere where he could be in the spotlight a little bit more, I think that would be a great move for him. And the other former Ayr player that I want to chat to you about, Jack, and it's one that I know you have a soft spot for, really, is Scotland international Lawrence Shankland. Dundee United have not backed a bid of £500,000 from Belgian Pro League side Beerschot. Sounds like a pretty good night out, that. While Ipswich Town are also reported to be monitoring the striker. Again, just give me some memories of Lawrence Shankland's time at Ayr United, because I think people forget that it was that sort of goal-scoring phenomenon, if I can say that he was at Somerset Park that got him that move to Dundee United.
It absolutely was. And I mean, it almost hurt me a little bit, the fact that when he was scoring all those goals at Ayr, he chose to go to Dundee United rather than potentially take the step up into the Premiership that a lot of Ayr fans were kind of expecting him to, because when he moved to Dundee United, they were still in the Championship and he just kind of seemed to jump almost for the money at that point, we were thinking, which was a bit sad for us to see as a fan base. But he was absolutely sensational. He was honestly just kind of one of these players that you could watch week in, week out, and just even if he was having a poor game, you could think to yourself, he'll get a goal. Like he can pop up with a goal at any time, and he could score like that many different types of goals. I mean, headed efforts on either foot, he was solid. So I used to love watching him play, and I still do. I still do think he's a really, really talented player, and I've been really excited by seeing him getting involved in the Scotland setups and everything like that. He was there on that night in Belgrade. He wasn't in the squad in the summer, of course, but there were just players that had kind of had that better runs of form leading up to the tournament, and I'm not going to be surprised if we see him back in Scotland squads in the games to come. So the move is interesting, because I think it's not just Dundee United and Ipswich, Beerschot and Ipswich. I've been seeing a lot of rumours about Hearts on social media today as well. But it's an interesting one, because Dundee United aren't in the best financial security that they've been in. think there's a fair bit of instability surrounding the club, and Shankland's entering the last year of his contract, so I think a lot of clubs will be seeing a fairly cut price fee for the striker, who probably United's best player. That's probably a fair estimate. I mean, Siegrist aside, outfield player, I would definitely say it's Shankland, but I have a feeling, I mean, Daniel Mack in the comments here, he's saying they should get 1.5 million for Shankland, surely. But I'm just not entirely sure that that's going to be the fee that a lot of clubs would be willing to put out, because of the reasons that I mentioned in terms of United's financial instability and the fact that he's only got a year left on his current deal.
Yeah, very good points, and sort of a few things I want to unpick from that. Let's talk about that Hearts link. I've been seeing it a lot. Of course, being in Midlothian, I know a lot of Jambos, and they're getting a bit excited about that link. And that picture always emerges of him kicking about in a maroon strip when he was a youngster. Do you think that move makes sense for both Shankland and Hearts, considering that Liam Boyce has been such a strong goal-scoring figure for Robbie Nielsen's side over the last season or so? And I guess on top of that, another factor you need to consider are the rumours yet to be confirmed that Armand Nandwile isn't too happy at Tynecastle. He deleted all his Hearts-related posts off of his social media last night. But Lawrence Shankland isn't going anywhere to play backup, and I doubt that Liam Boyce plans on being backup at Tynecastle either. So, does that move make sense for the player and also Heart and Midlothian themselves?
I think it's an interesting one from a Hearts perspective, because we don't actually know all the ins and outs of the Nandwile situation yet. It seems as though there's been a bit of a falling out there, whether that kind of leads to kind of his obscurity at the club. I'm not yet sure, but I mean, we kind of spoke about it earlier. We've been seeing Liam Boyce kind of drop back a bit into midfield. He was playing midfield in the Premier Sports Cup at points, and if that is going to be the plan, that Nielsen might be kind of moving Boyce further back, it would make sense for them to bring in Shankland. He's a player that knows the division. He had a fairly decent Premiership season last year for United, and I don't think he would be happy playing backup. You're absolutely right. He's a Scotland international after all, so he would want to be playing week in, week out. And I think, depending on whether they go with that system of dropping Boyce further back into midfield, I think they would be giving him the play time that he's wanting, because he's a player that does deserve that week in, week out game time, absolutely.
And do you think, when you reflect on Lawrence Shankland's season last year, you said that I think Ayr fans were disappointed they didn't make that initial step up to the Premiership, and some people, I think, fairly harshly said that, well, maybe we saw last season that wasn't his level. He played 32 times, he only scored 8 goals. Do you think that Lawrence Shankland's debut Premiership season was a bit of a disappointment last term?
It could have gone better, but at the same time, Dundee United were just quite disappointed last season. It was very, very kind of uninspiring, kind of fairly turgid football that they played a lot of the time, often kind of getting their wins by kind of 1-goal margins. So, and that kind of seemed to come from anywhere. I think Julian Sporrell probably popped up with more. I kind of seem to remember his name in the score sheet more than I remember Shankland's, which probably says something about his season. I don't know. I think he came up with high expectation because a lot of Ayr fans and people that watch the Championship said that about him when he was playing down in the second tier, that he is a Premiership standard striker. So I think at the first opportunity, people were expecting maybe a 10-15 goal season from him. And when that didn't come to fruition, people were questioning why he was even being considered for Scotland squads. But I think he's taking that adjustment now, and I think he'll be able to kind of kick on from this point and play at this level, because he's shown that while he might not have been as prolific as many expected, he still did get a few goals last season, probably played a fair part in a number of Dundee United's wins in the division last year.
Yeah, for me, I think he also struggled for fitness for a little bit last season, and another thing that sort of held him back was Mickey Mellon's insistence on playing all 3 of his strikers at the same time. Nicky Clark, Lawrence Shankland and Mark McNulty, and they seem to just get in each other's way a bit, and I guess it makes sense. I mean, they did struggle for goals last season, Dundee United, and it seemed to be that they just wanted to get as much firepower on the park as they could. And I would also suspect that perhaps the plan wasn't to play Nicky Clark, but his goal scoring form kind of made that option to drop him a much harder one. So I think they all just got in each other's way a bit, and I think that if United had stuck with one striker, maybe 2, and of course that you'd expect that to be Lawrence Shankland for his goal scoring exploits and the fact that he's actually very good in his technical play as well, then I think that would have benefited the striker a lot more. And our final transfer talk subject is now former Rangers winger Jordan Jones, who has today joined Wigan Athletic for an undisclosed fee. Would you say that's a sensible move for all parties, Jack, considering that it didn't really seem to be in Steven Gerrard's plans, and he had a decent spell at Sunderland last season in League One, and this is a side in Wigan who will you'd expect would be gunning for that title?
You're absolutely right. I mean, as soon as he kind of took the step down to League One last year in the January move into Sunderland on loan, I kind of had that in my head that was his time at Rangers up. He would probably move on either to the same division or somewhere similar, maybe another Premiership side or maybe even a Championship side potentially in the summer. Going down to Wigan, and he seemed to get on all right down in Sunderland. You said it yourself. I mean, a mutual friend of ours, Ralph Boyd, he's from down kind of that area, and he said that he was probably one of Sunderland's best players last season. So
I think it's 3 goals and 4 assists in 19 appearances last season, which isn't sort of setting the world on fire, but a fairly decent.
It's a fairly modest return considering he's probably been out of favour and lacking that kind of consistent game time that he was getting at Kilmarnock. But you'll probably be able to tell us a bit more about the player in himself and Jordan Jones, having watched him for a couple of seasons at Rugby Park. So, I mean, what kind of player are Wigan going to be getting in Jones?
It depends what John Jones shows up, and that was so often the frustration when I was watching him play at Rugby Park, because undoubtedly there's a talented player in there. His directness, his trickery were both skills that sort of brought a great edge to that Kilmarnock side. The problem was when he got in the final third, more often than not, his final delivery was very poor. So that's why there was obviously the big noise when John Jones signed for Rangers on a pre-contract, but Kilmarnock fans were more upset by the way that was handled by John Jones. He sent out a tweet saying how delighted he was to join Rangers and other stuff that I won't get into, but he, at that time, and people laugh at me saying this, but in terms of points in the table, Kilmarnock were in a title race with Rangers and Celtic and Aberdeen at the time. I mean, the next game after the winter break, Kilmarnock beat Rangers with a Jordan Jones winner to go above Rangers into second in the league. So there was no doubt about it that Kilmarnock and Rangers were at a level standing at that point in the season. So that was less the problem and more the way that Jones sort of handled it. But because if there was a player who you could have taken out that Kilmarnock side who were doing so well under Steve Clarke, probably was Jordan Jones. He wasn't the one. Greg Stewart, who went to Aberdeen, was a massive loss to Kilmarnock. But Jordan Jones, Kilmarnock fans knew that week in, week out, he wasn't a consistent performer. So there was other players in that team, your likes of Greg Taylor, Stephen O'Donnell, Alan Power, Gary Dicker, who were much more important to that Kilmarnock team. So maybe League One is somewhere where Jordan Jones can thrive. I know he's... he had that good spell at Sunderland in the northeast where he's from, so I think there's a potential for him to do well there, and we'll just have to wait and see for him. But it makes a lot of sense for Rangers considering that he wasn't going to feature in terms of minutes, and also there was an incident where he was had broken lockdown rules and had a house party. The standards that Steven Gerrard set both on and off the pitch, I think that puts a marker down that if you do something like that, he won't stand for it, and it will sort of be a message to other players that you'll be shipped out this club pretty quickly. But John Jones will have a couple of standout moments at Rangers, and I'm sure he'll have still reflecting his time there with disappointment, but also sort of remember those good moments. Speaking of Rangers, their usual high European standards came under immense pressure last night as a Stephen Davis strike at the death kept them in the tie after Swedish champions Malmo scored 2 goals in as many minutes to give them the advantage heading into the return leg at Ibrox. Was this result a surprise to you, Jack, considering, like I said, Rangers have been so strong in Europe? Admittedly, this is a step up, of course, in the Champions League.
They have been strong, but I think I wouldn't really look into it as much more of a step up, because I think they've beaten better teams than Malmo and kind of during Steven Gerrard's time and during their European ventures thus far. I'm not necessarily sure I was expecting Rangers to have lost, but it wouldn't have caught me by surprise, and it didn't, because I feel like they're still they looked kind of stuttery against Livingston at the weekend, and I know they still get that 3-0 win and it was a fairly professional performance, but some of their players, they're kind of better players from last season. I mean, James Tavernier, he got 2 assists, but throughout the 90, he didn't look up to his usual kind of blistering self, and the same can probably be said for a number of Rangers players. I'm was a good strike by Davis, and I know how kind of high you were on him last season. He had a great season up here. It just seemed like one of these games that Rangers kind of could have gone away and gotten something from the either one. And it just seemed a bit of an oddity to me, to be honest. I know I'm kind of waffling, trying to find a point here, but I'm just thinking it could have gone either way for me. I didn't really have it set in my mind that Rangers were going to get the win for this one. I think it's probably going to be a different story coming back next week and playing at Ibrox. I mean, we're probably going to mention it in terms of the crowd capacity and everything like that. I know their manager might not be one to call on the Ibrox faithful and calling a fan to win a football game. There might be something about that.
My questions, chat.
Sorry, I'll leave that for you to ask me, but I genuinely do think that will impact what's set to be a really, really important night for Steven Gerrard and Rangers next week.
Yeah, I think on the topic of Gerrard, I think that the defending in that game was kind of reminiscent to his early spell at Rangers. You know, just the way that Rangers could capitulate at any moment, didn't really have that faith that they could see out games or see out the big opportunity, more so domestically, you would say, than on the European stage. But it was, some of the defending was pretty cataclysmic last night. It wasn't good at all, and to just sort of lose 2 goals in such a short period of time, like I said, would be a little bit concerning, I think, for the Rangers manager. That goal from Stephen Davis is obviously massive. To get it so late on, psychologically and in terms of the scoreline as well, of course, meaning that just a 2-0 win or a win by 2 goals would serve Rangers well in that game at Ibrox. Let's talk about that. Steven Gerrard asking for the fans. He's been very vocal that fans don't win football games, he says. He's never known a fan to win a football game. And he said it last night that it was his first time ever in his Rangers career that he's asking for the fans on Wednesday night. So what do you make of that? Is that a sign of weakness from the Rangers manager? Does that show that he's nervous about this game? Or do you think it's smart from him to call on a returning Rangers fan base who have been away for so long in a massive game for the club?
I think it is smart to call on them, but I'm not necessarily sure he did need to, because you said it yourself, they've been away for so long. And capacity set to be increased, and it's a massive must-win game. I don't really think there was any need for a call to arms. I think every single Rangers fan entering Ibrox next week, should they have the good fortune to do so, will be fired right up for it. And I don't think they're going to give any of these Malmo players a warm welcome. They're going to be right in their face. They're going to be jeering. They're going to be booing. They're going to be antagonising them from before the starting whistle. They're going to be, as soon as they step out onto the pitch for their warm-ups, they're going to be right in their ears screaming all sorts of abuse, which is what would be expected at any ground, especially in a must-win game for the home side, which it really is. I think it will play a really important factor, because the atmosphere at Ibrox can be an intimidating one. Sorry, just stumbling over my words there, but it really can be, especially for the amount of people that you're looking to get in. And I think, considering how starved a lot of football fans have been of live sport and live football for the past 18 months or so, they're going to be going in with all this pent-up passion, and they're going to be going in with the knowledge that they might not have been in since before Rangers won the league. So they want to go out and vocalise that and make sure that it's a night to remember, a night to celebrate on the return.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Ibrox is not exactly known as a quiet place. I don't think for a big Champions League game that they haven't had for so long, and the fact that, yes, they've been away from the stadium for a while, I don't think if Steven Gerrard was going to play that card, I don't think he necessarily had to do it. And it's funny, just because he said it previously that he doesn't believe in fans winning games and all that sort of stuff. I just think it is quite amusing that he's pulled for that one. But when we're talking about fans, we have to talk about the news that broke last night, courtesy of an exclusive from Andy Newport at The Record. The Glasgow City Council are expected to give both Celtic and Rangers the green light to have full capacity at their European fixtures next week. That news made me so buzzing last night, Jack.
Listen, Sean, I don't really have much of an affinity towards either one of the Glasgow sides in terms of Celtic.
I can guarantee I have less of an affinity than you.
But the thing is, that's only good news. That is absolutely fantastic news to hear, because of what it'll do for just the morale of the country, really. I mean, just being able to see... I mean, you and I have had this discussion. Growing up is seeing your hatred toward, or your lack of faith and your lack of support towards an Old Firm side in Europe diminishing, so you'll want to see them do well. And I think any fan of Scottish football that wants to see either team do well in Europe is going to be buzzing with the fact that they're going to have their full capacity. So that's 50,000 odd at Ibrox and 60,000 odd at Celtic Park. That's incredible. That's going to be absolutely fantastic. You just cannot wait to hear the immense noise that's going to be coming out. It's almost going to seem foreign after so long of hearing this artificial crowd noise and just really, really diminished capacities already. Just hearing the roar of 50,000 plus fans in either stadium, it's going to be something really, really special for the fans and kind of the return of football in Scotland as a whole, because it kind of seemed it was always going to just be Celtic and Rangers that would have had to have kept applying to the councils to be able to let more than 5,000 in. But it's just going to be really, really gratifying to see look on that in the coming days. But yeah, no, really, really excited to see the full crowds back at both grounds next week.
Yeah, Tim's Pat asking there, is it only Glasgow full crowds are allowed? Just that those are the first games that are going to be getting played in Glasgow. The report is that Glasgow City Council specifically are expected to give the green light. We're, of course, yet to hear about how other councils will react to that. And I guess if just sort of talking solely from a football fan's perspective, I think it's fair to say that First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's sort of announcement yesterday was perhaps met with a bit of disappointment, considering full crowds did seem to be an option, and then this sort of process of still having to apply for allocations above 5,000 sort of caused some football fans to be a little bit annoyed at that. But does this news from Glasgow City Council give hope, Jack, that perhaps the expectation is that full crowds will be granted, and then it's only if for some reason that a stadium can't provide that in a safe manner that they would be given any less? It does give hope for the rest of us that so if Celtic and Rangers are getting full fans, why wouldn't other teams?
It absolutely does, because I think you're going to say it's you or I, Sean, and you're wanting to get to Somerset Park, you want to get to Rugby Park, and you're thinking, right, I might not be able to get in because full crowds might not be allowed. North Ayrshire Council say, no, you can't have full capacity in Rugby Park. Easy argument can go, but they can have 60,000 up in Glasgow. So it's going to be an easy argument. And Daniel Mack's coming in, the gate revenue is going to be helping smaller teams, absolutely. Like, that's only it's going to do nothing but good. And realistically, for the maintenance and the continuation of a kind of growing profile of the Scottish game, it kind of seems to be building up slowly but surely across the board. You're going to want to get full crowds in regardless. Just get these clubs growing, get these clubs some money back under the belt, and just keep things going. But the fact that we're going to see 110,000 football fans going to stadiums in Glasgow next week, I don't really think there should be much case for an argument against having full capacity across the rest of Scotland, because you've not got capacity for 50, 60,000 anywhere else in Scotland. So there really shouldn't be any kind of qualms for getting anywhere between 5 and 10, or potentially a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess the only argument would maybe be like sort of prevalence of the virus in particular areas, and maybe there'll be sort of given more restrictions there. But I don't think Glasgow is particularly lower or higher than anywhere else. So I think that that's something that should be considered, of course. And I've got my eyes firmly set on Easter Road next Sunday. Edinburgh City Council have been a little bit sort of pernickety with their choices so far, which is making me nervous. But the idea that could be the first time I get to go to a Kilmarnock game as a fan since February 2020 makes me extremely excited. So if anybody from Edinburgh City Council is watching this, please let us in. I wanted to ask you a question, Jack. So, say full stadiums are opening up, where in Scotland? I want three answers. I want where in Scotland that you haven't been before that you would like to go to a full stadium. Same question with England, and then a European stadium that you'd love to just fly to and walk straight into the atmosphere.
I can give you my European one, because that just came to my mind straight away. Signal Iduna Park, Borussia Dortmund, just hearing that yellow wall just in front, and just knowing how passionate that city are about their football, and you get some really good football. You'd potentially get to see Erling Haaland. We still don't know what's going on with him, but I'd love to go over to that stadium at least once in my life. Like, that would be fantastic. Scotland, full capacity. As much as it kills me, the next Ayrshire derby at Rugby Park as an Ayr fan. Like, I think that's what you want, or even Somerset Park and just welcoming a few hundred Kelly fans over the kind of standing section. That would be great, just to have that atmosphere again. I mean, I've been to both, but so it's a bit of a cop-out answer. But I feel like it would have been a really, really entertaining kind of atmosphere had both sets of fans been there on Monday night.
I'll just jump in on that and say that as much as I enjoyed myself at the Ayrshire Derby on Monday, I was pressed, so I wasn't there as a fan. But I think that and the atmosphere was fantastic with 3,692 Kilmarnock fans, but the thing that was really lacking was having Ayr fans to laugh at as we strolled past them. So as soon as that can be rectified and there can be Ayr fans there so they can hear the chants of just how bad they are and how they have won nothing and never will, as that's exactly how Kilmarnock fans word it.
Oh yeah, there's not an extra expletive in there that we can't
absolutely not. That would never happen. It's a good family club. But yeah, it was sorely lacking Ayr fans, and yeah, give me an English one, even though who cares really.
And I've been to Stamford Bridge and everything like that, and I've been to a couple of other stadiums. I've been to St James's Park down in England as well. I'd maybe want to go to Selhurst Park. I feel like Crystal Palace can get a decent atmosphere going at Selhurst Park. They've got a good set of fans about them, and they've got an exciting young team coming through. A lot of decent young players going there. Michael Elise, Mark Gahey, and Conor Gallagher, just to name a couple. So I feel like it'd be a kind of optimum time towards the start of the season to get a full crowd in Selhurst Park and kind of get the atmosphere going there. But what about you, Sean? I'm excited. I'm interested to hear where you'd be thinking of going first.
Scottish one is less based on full stadiums and more the one that you can sort of like, now we can just travel around again and you shouldn't have to worry about having pre-book tickets and all that sort of stuff. But I've not been to some of the grounds with character, some of the smaller ones that I'd really like to. So I would say either Gayfield or Glebe Park, just because they're kind of one of the ones that, as a Scottish football fan, you've got to tick off. You've got to tick off being absolutely freezing at Gayfield, right by the sea.
You say you want to go to Gayfield until you actually go to Gayfield, and then it's just you get all the seasons in an hour. It's ridiculous.
I want to do it, and then of course the Hedge at Glebe Park.
Oh, the Hedge, heritage.
I don't know when the last time Kilmarnock played Brecon was. I don't remember, but I think that, and it's probably going to be a while considering the relegation from the SPFL last season. But that's somewhere that I'd be keen to go to and taking the ground. England, Anfield, I guess, has the best atmosphere there, and also like Elland Road. I like the way Leeds play football.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of those two. And then my European one's pretty obvious. I've got a soft spot for Atletico Madrid, and I think they have one of the best atmospheres in European football. And with Diego Simeone being the ringmaster and cheering them all up, I would love to experience that and see the Spanish champions in action. So, yeah, that's so. Gayfield, Anfield, and Wanda Metropolitano are the three on my list, which is a pretty good one, I think. And while we're on these sort of weird questions, I want to find one. I've lost it now. From Terence Pratt again. There it is. I found it. Who will finish top scorer in the SPFL this season, Jack? We like some viewers' questions. I'm going to do that in Scottish Premiership. I'm picky about these things. You'll learn that at the state of Scottish football. And we're going to go with the top division and ask who do you think will be top scorer in the Scottish Premiership this season?
Oh, we've not made these predictions before, have we? We've not.
That's why I saw that there, and I was like, I'm going to put Jack on his toes.
See, it's hard to because there's a couple of obvious answers, but there's no guarantee that they'll actually be here for the entirety of the season. Potentially, that could ruin their chances. I've said Liam Boyce is going to be a top three. He's going to be one of the top three scorers in the division this season, and I've kind of laid my marker down early with that one. I saw Daniel Mack comment J. Emmanuel Thomas. That's and a very interesting shout considering Christian Ramirez has also just touched down at Pittodrie and he got off to a flying start scoring in his first game in that 2-0 win over Dundee United. Oh, this is... I don't know. I actually don't know. I need to pick an answer, don't I?
I will save you and give you some thinking time and give you my answer.
Oh, do you know it right away?
Well, I'm going to go off the assumption that Odsonne Edouard and Alfredo Morelos leave Glasgow this summer. I think Edouard is almost certain to happen. Morelos perhaps less likely, but I'm just going to assume that they're leaving. Even if he stays, I'm going to bet on Kamar Roof getting some more goals this season. Had a very good debut season at Ibrox, and I say that I expect Rangers to win the league this season, and I think that Kamar Roof could grab a few more goals en route to that, especially if Morelos does leave and he gets to lead the line on his own. So that's who I'm going for, Jack. I think that's enough waffle in there for you to have come up with a significant answer.
I like that shout, to be fair. I mean, he's 1 from 1 so far, so you're off to the best possible start with that shout. I think it's definitely a possibility, especially if Morelos does in fact leave. And even if he doesn't, I could just see Roof being a bit more prolific. I could just see him being a bit more deadly this season. I'll go for Taverna gets 20 pence a season minimum from Tennis Park there, so he's definitely going to be up there in that conversation, I suppose. There's 2 names, and I'm just struggling to settle on one. Either, I don't like going for an old firm shout. You should kind of learn this about me. I like kind of going as far away from them as possible. But potentially one of Christian Ramirez, who I just mentioned, or Kevin Nisbet, if he does stick at Hibs, and that's still going to be a question mark whether he does see it the whole campaign or potentially moves on in January, as he was almost likely to do last January for Birmingham City. But I'll go for one of those 2.
So that's Jack answering Christian Ramirez, Kevin Nisbet, Liam Boyce, and they liked my shout of Kamar Roof. So just the 4 top scorers in the Scottish Premiership.
I never said Liam Boyce would be top scorer. I said he'd be one of the top 3. I said he'd be between 1 and 3. There you go.
There we go. We'll move on now, and we've spoken about our question there is, as Rangers lose to Malmo, how will other Scottish sides do in Europe? And we've got so many to talk about this season, which is such a great thing. You're right, Jack. And I want to talk first about the tie I'm most excited about. Double cup winners St Johnstone have earned themselves a glamour tie in the third qualifying round of the Europa League, as the Saints head to Istanbul to take on Turkish giants Galatasaray. If you're a Saints fan, Jack, what would your reaction be when that draw came out the hat?
You'd almost just your mouth would just be a bit agape. You'd be thinking, right, we almost wouldn't know what to think. Just thinking they are a European giant, as you said, but they've almost been a bit slain the past couple of years. They've just kind of dropped below where they kind of were earlier in the kind of. You always think on that kind of side. I mean, Wesley Sneijder pulling the strings kind of towards the early kind of 2010s and everything like that. You saw, obviously, it's that Scottish thing when Graham Souness was there in the 90s, and that whole kick-off over the derby where he planted the Galatasaray flag in the middle of the pitch following a win. That all kicked off. So there is that Scottish link, but you'd almost just be thinking, this is going to be brilliant regardless, because you've got that kind of wait to look over and see how things get over in Istanbul, but then you've got to welcome them to Scotland. So you've just got that to look forward to. I mean, some really, really big names in that squad, some names that are going to be really familiar to fans of European football. And the most exciting thing for me, it's been announced, it's going to be on the telly. It actually is going to be on the telly. There was a lot of debate over whether it was going to get shown, but they're going to be playing it on Sports Scene, which I am absolutely ecstatic for. I can't wait to sit down on the couch and watch that one unfold.
Yeah, who wanted to watch Aberdeen anyway? I'm sure the number of people, neutral Scottish football fans, who have will be switching from that. I think they're on pretty much the same time, or about an hour's difference or something like that. So I think that I'll certainly be tuning in for that one. And I thought it was a travesty. It was a national embarrassment that Galatasaray versus St Johnstone was.
You tweeted about it, didn't you?
I did tweet about it. I was expecting Nicola Sturgeon to address it yesterday versus during our announcement. I tuned in not to hear if coronavirus restrictions were going to be getting lifted across the country. I wanted to know about the public inquiry into why Galatasaray versus St Johnstone wasn't on the telly. But I feel like my tweet did sort of put pressure on the government and the broadcasters as well. And I believe I played a big part in the fact that game will be on the telly tomorrow night. Free to air telly as well. So people up and down the country can tune in for it. Absolute belter. And we spoke a little bit there about Galatasaray, and of course they were once a sort of regular Champions League side and made the knockouts plenty of times as well. They're not the same level as their previous iterations, but they still have plenty of quality. So who should we be looking out for, Jack, in this Galatasaray side?
Well, Sean, firstly, Galatasaray were unbelievably unlucky not to win the league last season. They finished second on the same points as Besiktas, the champions. Now, the way the league works in Turkey is settled on head-to-head before it goes to goal difference. But they were equal on head-to-head. They both had one win each in their two encounters, and they both scored 3 goals against each other over the course of those 2 encounters. One was a 2-0 win for Besiktas, the other a 3-1 win for Galatasaray. So that consolation goal for Besiktas could potentially have been the one to have won them the title. It came down to goal difference, and Galatasaray missed it by 1 goal on winning that title. So a really, really unlucky turn of events for Galatasaray. So there absolutely is quality in this side. I'm not going to pretend that I've got an in-depth knowledge on Turkish football because, plain and simple, I don't. But there are a number of players in that squad who have done really well in Europe before and are kind of still plying their trade and playing at a decent level over in Turkey. I mean, first of all, their goalkeeper, Fernando Muslera, he's been a mainstay for Galatasaray for, I think, ever since I've seen them. I think just about the first time I saw Galatasaray kind of during those really good kind of Champions League runs, he was in between the sticks and he's the starting goalkeeper for Uruguay as well. So they've been playing his trade in the Copa America this summer. Patrick Van Aanholt's a new addition this summer, moving over from Crystal Palace. I was a really big fan of his when he played in the Premier League. I thought he was a really good attacking left back. He's always looking to get forward, has a real eye for goal. Kind of tended to score kind of upwards of 5-6 goals a season for Palace and really help them out in their goal scoring exploits. Up front, when talking about goal scoring exploits, Radamel Falcao, he was an absolute hitman for Porto, Atletico, Monaco. Had a couple of fairly mundane seasons over in England with Man United and Chelsea, but he was really, really good across the rest of Europe. And I think he's 17 goals in 33 appearances. I think I might have the stats just slightly wrong off the top of my head, but in the 2 league seasons he spent at Galatasaray, he's had a fairly decent return so far, and he definitely has a capability to kind of get in about the centre backs that St Johnstone are going to be deploying. I mean, I think Jason Kerr's potentially going to be up for a bit of a match against Falcao because he might not come across as the most bullish of forwards, but he definitely can give a centre back a really good challenge. And then
jumping on that, Jack, because my next question was actually that I was reported a little bit last week that Radamel Falcao has been told by Galatasaray to find another club. I don't think he's expected to feature in this game. And Jason Kerr was in the press today actually talking about the fact that he hopes that Radamel Falcao can find his way into the game tomorrow because he would relish coming up a player like you were laying out there with such a rich European pedigree. Do you think psychologically, if he's not there, is that a good thing for the Saints? Do you think that that back three who impressed everyone so much last season, and Jason Kerr, Liam Gordon and Jamie McCart, do you think that they'd be the type of players who would, as Kerr was sort of alluding to, relish that opportunity? Or do you think that without such a big name in front of them, they might be able to just sort of relax a little bit in what I'm sure will be a pretty intense atmosphere, and that may just settle them down that little bit more?
Look, I don't think it's disrespectful for me in any way to say that St Johnstone did better than anyone expected them to last season. Of course, that double cup win is
2 cups. No, I had them to win both the cups.
They exceeded all expectations last season, and it was because of that back three that you mentioned. And I think they'd be besides themselves if they didn't want to go up against one of kind of Colombia's best ever forwards. I mean, realistically, they've got nothing to lose going up against Falcao. If they put in a great shift and they block him out, it's an absolutely unbelievable performance. Or if he does kind of get past them and score maybe 1-2 goals, they can say, look, we gave it a shot, but he's just a player of a really, really high caliber. So I think it's indicative of the mentality that the three of them are showing, and Kerr especially, just saying that he's really, really keen to get up against Falcao, and credit to him for wanting to do so. I mean, he's definitely not the same level that he would have been kind of his Porto and Atletico days, but there's absolutely still a goal scorer in there. We've seen that when he moved to Monaco, and he's now on to Galatasaray. So they'd definitely be up for a challenge, and I think it's one that they're absolutely right to go in and kick on.
Yeah, I'd love to see that match up personally, because I do really rate those St Johnstone centre backs. But I mean, if it stops Galatasaray from getting through and gets St Johnstone what would be a famous win, then I'm pretty happy with that. I thought it was interesting at the weekend, Jack, in their 0-0 draw with Ross County up at Dingwall, that they started with Callum Hendry and Michael O'Halloran as their front two options, because last season the more prominent ones for St Johnstone were Stevie May and Chris Kane, who came on in the 76th minute in a double swap for the two aforementioned forwards. Would you expect Callum Davidson to revert to those two if he's going to go with two up front? How do you sort of expect St Johnstone to line up offensively, considering that a goal in this game could be absolutely massive for them?
It's tough. It is tough to say, to be quite honest, because I think Cameron and I discussed it on Monday's show. I think St Johnstone, they still are quite light up front because it is just O'Halloran, Kane and May. And Stevie May's been a bit kind of wayward with his kind of goal scoring exploits just kind of throughout last season and into this. So I feel like they're just going to want the most reliable options. And I think it's going to be a bit of a head scratcher for Davidson to actually nail down which of the two, if he does decide to play with two, those are going to be. I think Chris Kane's probably a good shout for this game. I think he's a good kind of physical striker. And I think Turkish football itself can get quite physical from what I've seen of it. So I think up against the Galatasaray backline, he'd probably be a smart option. And then take your pick from May or O'Halloran. I'm honestly not sure which I would play alongside him. But I think I would definitely start Kane in this one.
Yeah, Kane led the line by himself in the big games last season in the League Cup final and the Scottish Cup final. I think this is another sort of similar test for St Johnstone, so I think that I'd be very surprised if Chris Kane isn't in that starting lineup. We move on now, and Aberdeen are in Iceland to take on Breidablik in what many are calling the biggest European night in the home side's history. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people would have expected Austria Vienna to be coming up against Aberdeen in this one. It was a shock that the Icelandic side managed to progress. Do you think that will have affected Stephen Glass's thinking too much when you expect to play a side who you would probably say are a little bit more evenly matched, and then just a week before you find out that it's going to be a side who you're very much expected to beat? So that changes your on-field expectations, but also you've got to manage the fact that if Aberdeen lose this one, a lot of criticism will be coming their way.
Yeah, no, that's it, absolutely. I think that would have caught everyone at Aberdeen by surprise, the fact that Breidablik managed to get past Vienna. I think I kind of had them I kind of had Vienna and Aberdeen in my head, and I was expecting that kind of to be a pretty decent tie. But I think it is just that case of you might end up underestimating this side, and you really can't at this point when you put out the team that you were expecting to face. So you might have to just really kind of reevaluate what you were planning on doing. So I'm interested to see how it pans out, because on the face of it, I would have Aberdeen getting through over the two legs, but kind of saw how they kind of fell away in their second leg in the previous round away. So is it going to be the same story? I think if they go away and they get a similar result, that's going to give Breidablik massive confidence for coming over to Scotland, and that might not be as simple a job as Aberdeen are expecting it to be. So intrigued to see how this one plays out. But I mean, I would back Aberdeen to have the quality to get through, and then I don't want to look too far ahead because I don't want to jinx anything for Aberdeen in the case of them potentially not getting through. Then they've got AEL Limassol of Cyprus or Karabag of Azerbaijan if they get through to the next round. And Karabag are no slouches either. I mean, they've had kind of recent Champions League experience, of course, playing the likes of Tottenham and putting on a decent showing. So I think they just need to kind of beat the opponents in front of them, of course, but they're kind of going to be keeping another eye on that tie and potentially trying to figure out who would be the best fit for them in the next round as well.
And of course, the Conference League is new, but the third qualifying round of European qualification has been the stumbling block for Aberdeen so often. I mean, they've gone out that stage in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 19 and 20, but facing good sides. I mean, and respectively in those years, they went out to Real Sociedad, Kirat, Maribor, Apple Limassol, Rijeka, who we're talking about in a sec, and last season it was Sporting Lisbon who knocked out the Dons. It was only in 2018 when they lost to Burnley, very narrowly lost to Burnley as well, which was great to see a Premier League side struggle so much against a Premiership outfit. So we know that's been their downfall, but this is a very different Aberdeen side and very different mindset, considering that Stephen Glass is a new manager and looks to have changed the philosophy there. It's now more sort of forward thinking compared to his predecessor, Derek McInnes. Who's getting you excited in this Aberdeen team, Jack? Who are you looking out for in this game and over this tie to impress for the Dons?
I'll leave the obvious answer to yourself, because I'd imagine there's one young 18-year-old right back that a lot of Dons fans are going to be really, really excited for going forward. For me, I have liked the look of Jet this season, to be honest. I think him kind of dropping deep and being able to provide support. 10. And I know I really like that. I mean, kind of dropping deep to be able to support support Ramirez going forward. I've really liked his link-up play, and obviously he's got a really good eye for goal. I mean, I liked him a lot at Livingston last season. I thought he was a good fit for the Premiership, and I think moving up to Aberdeen is indicative of that and indicative of what the club saw in him. So I'm really excited to see how he gets on. I'm intrigued to see how Lewis Ferguson gets on this season. I think I mentioned it before, whether it was on this show or one of our Energy Sport podcasts. Lewis Ferguson's kind of been afforded that bit more attacking potential just because of the kind of more defensively resolute signings in Scott Brown specifically, but then Declan Gallagher at the back, even though he didn't play at the weekend, as my fantasy team was disgusted by. But I really like the fact that he does have that bit more attacking freedom. I mean, in the first leg of the last round, he scored an absolute peach, and he's scored another as well. So having that kind of attacking freedom is going to be really important for Aberdeen this season, I feel, and it really could be the season that properly makes him stand out and potentially secures him a move away in the summer, which kind of seems to be it's been the story for the last kind of 2-3 seasons. Will Ferguson move on from Aberdeen this summer? And with that extra attacking responsibility that he'll probably thrive with, it could be the case next summer. So I'm excited to see how the pair get on. But I'd imagine you'd be the same, but there's another name we've obviously missed out.
I'll make it very brief as we only have about 9 minutes left of our show. Calvin Ramsey will be the breakout star of the Saints Premiership this season. Very impressed with him in his debut against Dumbarton in the Scottish Cup last season, and he's hit the ground running this season. Obviously got that great assist against Dundee United at the weekend. What a player. Keep an eye out. We'll all be talking about him at the end of the season. I'm very confident of that. And like I said, a familiar foe to Scottish opponents, Croatian side Rijeka are at Easter Road as they take on Hibs in another Conference League meeting. Jack Ross has not been too pleased in the press today, Jack, with the comments of his opposite number, Goran Tomic, who described Hibs and Scottish football as a place where sort of long ball thrives. He expected sort of very physical long ball football from Hibernian, which would make you think he's maybe not watched much of Jack Ross's team. So do you think that is just mind games from Tomic? Do you think that he's just trying to get in the heads, or otherwise that's a little bit worrying, because as I said, that would imply that he's not watched too much Hibs under Jack Ross? You
would assume that it's the former. You would assume that he is just trying to unnerve, but I mean, if he really is kind of expecting really just route one battle against Hibs, it could potentially end up a cricket score. You never know. But you would imagine it is the former, and just doing anything to rattle Ross's cage going into this game. It's a massive game for them, and it's a massive game for Hibs as well. I mean, the chance to kind of get through and get into that kind of next stage before the group stages, it's going to be massive. And I think Hibs are going to be massively up for it. I'm really excited to see how it pans out. But yeah, interesting comments to make, especially since long ball and Jack Ross are just two terms that I just do not see together whatsoever.
No, neither do I. And maybe Tomic's just feeling a bit bullish because his side have had a very good start to the season. They're unbeaten in 5 matches in all competitions. They dropped their first points of the season in a 3-0 draw with Dinamo Zagreb at the weekend. They'll certainly prove a sterner test than Santa Coloma in the previous time. I think we're all aware of that. They also have former Norwich City striker Josip Drmic up front, who scored 3 goals in his last 3 games. So that's an interesting name to look out for. But from a Hibs perspective, who would you sort of have in that game? Ross says it's a similar player pool to the one the game at Fir Park at the weekend. Do you expect any changes to be made? Perhaps the goal scorer Christian Doidge, perhaps the very impressive Jake Doyle-Hayes, who came off the bench and kind of changed that game for Hibs, really?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Doyle-Hayes afforded a start maybe in place of McGuinness. I'm not entirely sure who would drop out, but I think
even though McGuinness scored, I think that Jake Doyle-Hayes is levels above him.
I would probably have Doyle-Hayes in over McGuinness. I mean, Doig isn't going to be back for this game, so it's going to be Lewis Stevenson at left back again. I feel as though Doidge, while he scored, I think Nisbet did have those opportunities that were very, very close for him. I mean, he kind of slashed at it and then it kind of fell back to McGuinness for his goal. Obviously, it was his strike that hit the post, so it allowed Doidge to get on the end of that, kind of sliding in for the second equaliser against Motherwell. So I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Ross kept with Nisbet, but there's definitely room for Doidge to come in should he be needed, and I feel if it is going to be a bit of a physical test as the opposing manager is suggesting, Doidge is going to be right up for that absolutely as a kind of very dominant in the air striker. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does come in and make an impact at some point in the match. What about yourself, though? Would you kind of line up in a similar way, or would you stick with the side that kind of got the result in Fir Park at the weekend?
I think Jay Hayes has to come in. I was very surprised he didn't play at Fir Park on Sunday, because I just think he's a great signing. When I saw that one, when I knew that Jay Hayes was leaving St Mirren, I thought whoever picks him up has got a very good player on their hands, just 22 years old. A lot of talent. Was very impressed with him for St Mirren last season. And I think that he should play this game, definitely. Doidge, like you said, I think it's a tougher one to call there. But I think it'd be pretty funny if they do play Christian Doidge and play a long ball and manage to beat Rijeka, and just Jack Ross can sort of say to Tomic that, okay, fine, we will play long ball if you're going to call us a long ball team. I think that would be pretty amusing. We've only got a few minutes left, so let's quickly touch on Celtic games against Jablonec of the Czech Republic, and I'm sure that our sort of counterparts at A Celtic State of Mind on this network will be able to touch on this a lot more in tomorrow's bulletin at 12:30. But how important do you think it is, Jack, for Ange Postecoglou to get his first win in a competitive game as Celtic manager?
Absolutely massive. I mean, there's no dancing about it. It is a must-win game for him, for the fan base, for the club itself. It's going to be an absolute must-win. I don't know anything about Jablonec, to be quite honest with you, so I can't really comment on how I expect them to.
They were one of the.
Go on then.
I'm giving you a hand. You know what I mean? I always like to help you out, Jack, even though you support a horrible football. The Jablonec are one of the top scorers in the Czech League last season. Scored lots of goals, which would scare me as a Celtic if you're a Celtic fan, because we know what the defence has been like over the past year or so. But they still finished 18 points off the pace set by Slavia Prague, who, of course, we know very well over here, knocked Rangers out of Europe pretty impressively, you have to say. So, they're definitely a decent side, but of course Celtic will be the favourites. Would you expect to see, should we see either Joe Hart or James McCarthy, Celtic's two latest high-profile recruits?
I would almost expect to see Joe Hart. I would be a bit blindsided if he didn't end up playing, but I feel as though James McCarthy is probably going to be the one that would miss out if there was going to be one of the two. I feel we've kind of touched on it. We touched on it on Monday, and I'm sure the guys have touched on it on Axom as well. Is he a fully fit James McCarthy? He's not going to have had a pre-season or anything like that, having left Palace kind of towards the start of the summer. So he's going to be nowhere near match fit, especially in a competitive match like this. So I think Hart should probably get the nod in goal. I would imagine he'll come in and he'll probably put on a performance, but McCarthy I wouldn't expect to see start from the off at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I really like engaging with these questions in the chat, and please do keep them coming. So our last question, it'll have to be fairly brief, Jack, but Terence Pat is asking, will Malcolm Mackay be a success at Ross County?
I hope not. I mean, I don't really want to go too much into it, but I do not have any time whatsoever for that appointment. I'm surprised the man's still in football, to be quite honest with you. And I hope it's not a success, because I've got County predicted to finish bottom, so I want my prediction to come in from a selfish point of view. But are you of a similar opinion, or?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't want Malcolm Mackay to do well, and I also just think that Ross County are going to be the poorest team in the Premiership this season. Also, the same as you, I think they'll finish bottom, and so for that reason, I would not say that would be. I don't think it could be a success at Ross County. Kenny coming in the chat just to tell us that McCarthy has not travelled with the team. See, that's the type of insight that you get on A Celtic State of Mind, which will be 12:30 tomorrow. But as for the state of Scottish football, we have to say thank you for joining us again on this Wednesday evening. We'll be back tomorrow on Thursday. Keep an eye on A State of Mind social media, and of course the boss man Paul John Dykes for updates on that show tomorrow and when that goes live and all those sorts of things. But thank you very much to Jack Donnelly for joining me. I've been Sean McGill, and we'll see you again soon.